Georgia says 21 police officers have been injured in pro-EU demonstrations on Sunday. The unrest was triggered by the Prime Minister's announcement on Thursday that he would suspend Georgia's bid to join the EU. On Sunday, he rode back on those comments. Steve Rosenberg sent this report from the capital, Tbilisi.
In Tbilisi, now every night is fireworks night. A fourth night of protests outside Parliament. While inside, police try to keep protesters at bay. A brolly helps at moments like these.
So the police right now are firing streams of water from inside the Parliament, going the other way, fireworks hurled by the protesters. It is the most surreal standoff.
The crowds are huge. So is the disappointment that the government here has frozen accession talks with the EU. But people are still hoping.
And every single day, there's more and more people coming. And it gives me hope that this government will finally go away.
No sign of that. Earlier, the head of the government praised the police and condemned the protests.
Many of the protesters have said to me that by suspending until the end of 2028 Georgia's bid to join the European Union, you have stolen, your government has stolen their European dream, their European future. People feel betrayed. Can you understand that?
The response is very clear. So we have not suspended anything related to the European integration. It's just a lie. And there are the opposition leaders, there are the media outlets linked with the opposition who are just lying to these people.
But you suspended this until 2028.
No, it's not true. It's not true.
Really? Here's what he said 3 days ago.
Today, we have decided not to put the issue of opening negotiations with the European Union on the agenda until the end of 2028. We also refuse any budgetary grants from the European Union until the end of 2028.
It was that announcement that sparked the protests and violence. Here, a makeshift firework gun fires at police, while police officers have been accused of assaulting protesters.
You must have seen the videos of the brutal way in which the police have treated some of the protesters in the last few days. What is your reaction to that?
Investigation will happen against this kind of incidents, but also in this case, it's important to have a clear position with regard to the violence from both sides.
The protesters accuse the government of selling out to Russia, which the authorities deny. Neither side shows any sign of backing down. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Tbilisi.
Well, our South Caucasus and Central Asia correspondent Rayhan Dimitri is in Tbilisi, and she told me more about the motivations behind the current protests.
Well, this was the fourth night of clashes between the protesters and the police. And a large number of people turned up here in the capital, Tbilisi. But also we've seen protests in other large and small towns across the country against the government's U-turn on Europe. These people who are protesting, they believe that their country is somehow acting in Russia's interests. And when I attended the protests, and yesterday, every night, people are chanting Russians or they're chanting traitors, and that is addressed to the government, which those protesters in the streets do not recognize. They're saying this is an illegitimate government because they believe that the ruling Georgian Dream Party stole last month's parliamentary election. And the announcement by the Prime Minister several days ago that now the decision has been made by the ruling party to stop Georgia's EU accession process, that really crossed the line for a lot of protesters and reinforced their belief that their country wants to take away their European dream and wants to move this country closer to Europe. That's why we're seeing such angry crowds out in the streets, because they do not want to see their country reversing from its European path, because this is what people here have been struggling for for several decades.
Yeah, Rayhan, what's been made to that really interesting exchange between the Prime Minister and Steve Rosenberg that seemed to suggest a rowing back of that statement that you talked about there a couple of days ago, which was putting off EU talks until, 2028? Has there been much reaction to those latest comments from the Prime Minister?
Well, there has been a reaction from the country's president, pro-Western president. She has emerged as a figure which consolidated, all opposition parties have consolidated around her. And the protesters, they believe that she is currently the only legitimate leader in this country. President Salome Zurabishvili, talking about this latest statement from the Prime Minister, she described it as, she said, the government seems to be confused because, of course, 4 days ago he made that statement. That is the reason why people out in the streets en masse across the country. And yesterday he backed down on his own words, saying that this government is still wants to see Georgia joining the EU.
And that was Rayhan Dimitri reporting from Tbilisi.